In June 2019, I took what at that time I thought was the trip of a lifetime to a conference out in West Yellowstone, Montana. I've got a couple of videos prior to this one where I talk about the things I did prior to that, but I think this is day 7 of my trip. I can't remember. It's been a while, but it was back in 2019 when I did it. I stayed in Lander, Wyoming at an Airbnb. Lovely place, a fantastic place. And then I traveled to the Popoja Sinks up the canyon, down to South Pass City, down to Farson, back up through Pinedale, and Daniel up through Hoback to Jackson on this leg of the trip. Now, on that particular day, I traveled more than that, but this is sort of the first leg. Lander is just on the southeast side of the Wind River range, and again, the Popoja River is there. The canyon's there. There's a place there where the river sinks into the ground and comes back up downstream a ways. I've got some video of that. South Pass City is an old gold mining town there. Got some photos of that. The Green River area is where several of the rendezvous were held during Mountain Man times. So it's a great trip. Wonderful drive up through there. Tremendously beautiful there in the Green River Valley. And as I say, I think this is day 7 of my trip and the first leg on this particular day. I started off that day at a restaurant. I thought this photo was pretty nice, and the restaurant's called the Middle Fork there in Lander. Had a great breakfast of, if I remember right, huevos rancheros. Had a nice breakfast there, and then I took a trip up the Popoja Canyon to the sinks up the river, up the canyon there. And you can see this is a glacial canyon. You could look at all the boulders that are strewn all along the way. You can see the cliffs there and the huge boulders at the bottom piled up, left over from the glaciers. Now this is the walkway up by the sinks. I think this is the river, the Popoja River coming down to the sinks. And then some more boulders, more pictures of the boulder field and all the cliffs coming up the canyon. This is the spot where the actual stream comes back up. And then here is some video of the entire thing as well. This is the rise of the Popoja River. I've got some audio underneath this that's really poor. And I was mispronouncing the term Popoja because Popoja is the name of the river in the language, I think, of Shoshone, maybe the Crow, I can't remember, Arapaho. I don't remember which tribe, but that's what it's called anyway. So this is where the river comes back up. There's a huge number of trout right down there, and you can feed them from above, but you can't fish there. I thought that was pretty neat. Not the Popoaji, Popoja. You can see here that this talks about the geology of the canyon, what was going on there. And this is where the cave where the river disappears down into the. So that was a wonderful experience there. This is the drive back from Lander down to South Pass City. Beautiful drive down. And I took, I think it was Wyoming 28 down to that. Now there's a little old ghost town there called Miner's Delight, along with the South Pass City area. Atlantic City's another one there. So you can see here it talks about the different things that have happened, boom and bust in terms of gold. And there's a Carissa mine there that has been in operation consistently. It's still in operation now. This is old South Pass City. So I've took some pictures of that. This was back in 2019. I did not really know much about videoing and didn't have much confidence in my capabilities. And I could have done more, but this is what we have. So this is what I'm going to post because I just want to get this up and share it. Kind of commit it to memory for my kids as well. So this is what this is all about here. I recommend stopping off at South Pass City. I didn't know about it until I stopped in Lander at the Airbnb, and I had a wonderful former history teacher. She was a retired history teacher for a retired teacher, I should say, in Wyoming, and she told me about the sinks and she told me about South Pass City. So the Airbnbs, when you get to know the people, that's a great way to get in there and see some things that you normally might not see. This is a memorial to Esther Morris, who was the first woman justice of the peace. And then this little prairie dog was a pretty cool guy. He's pretty laid back here, you can see. He's not too concerned about me. He wants something to eat, though. What do you think about it? He is not at all concerned about me being there. You can tell he's very domesticated. He doesn't really care about people at all. So he's all right with that. I thought it was funny. He decided finally to take off as I was walking up the sidewalk here, the boardwalk, which was pretty neat. These are just some other like old hotels, and one of the things I thought was interesting is the steepness of the stairs. There's an old stable, livery stable. You can see the feed troughs and things. And check this out. This is your solitary confinement. This is a jail cell. I'm not sure, I can't remember. This is a jail. Wouldn't want to be locked up there in the hole. So that tells you and I don't recall what this building is, but it's a pretty nice old log structure. This is a store. See the false front on it there. And then you have the old log bridge. And that's the livery stable from the outside. I like this sign here. About 4 people, 3 cats, 3 dogs, and 7,900 feet, 7,950 feet of elevation. Here's the mine, still in operation. And this talks about the Lander cutoff on the Oregon Trail. This was not really a shortcut, it was a different path to head up the Oregon Trail as well, to avoid Fort Bridger. This is a view of South Pass. This is the actual pass through the Rocky Mountains. That was the easiest way to go. It's a pass, but it's a several thousand foot high valley, which makes it easier to go across with wagons. Before that, they would have had to travel across really steep, rough mountain passes. And you can see the different mountains around there, the Wind Rivers and other mountain ranges in that area. Again, another shot of South Pass. This is a beautiful overlook. There's a great place there to stop and take a look, and there's some nice pictures of that. And then farther upstream, farther up the road, I stopped at the old overlook for the Green Mountain Rendezvous, which would have been in this valley, Horse Creek, and there were several rendezvous that were held in that area. In fact, there was a designation there for historical marker. And then this talks a little bit about the roundups there, the Wind River Range, and the different peaks that are there. And just north of there, you've got the Grand Tetons as well. And then I ended up traveling up to Jackson that day. Actually, that was the first leg of the trip. I had been to Jackson before on this trip and then had gone back out through Moran Junction and back across. Now I traveled across Teton Pass and dropped down into Idaho. And Teton Pass is an interesting place. Again, a place to cross through that tough mountain chain. Go back up through Victor. Driggs, Idaho, the seed potato capital of the world. Teutonia there. Just south of Teutonia, there's a historical marker, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Back up through Felt. And we're traveling on, let's see here, Idaho 33, I think it is. Idaho 32 through Felton up through Drummond, back over into Ashton. So that was the next leg of the trip. And leg 2, as I said, from Jackson up there. Day 7, but that's the second leg. This shot is one I took that is just south of Tetonia near a town called Clawson, Idaho. Talks about the formation of the Tetons and the fact that they're still rising. The Tetons were kind of a mile marker, if you will, a guide for people who were traveling through the area at the time. In fact, Wilson Price Hunt called them the pilot knobs because they allowed you to navigate. John Coulter traveled through there in 1808. I have a podcast series on trapping the American West, all kinds of things, and I've got several podcasts on this area and on the trappers who did so much back in this area in the 1800s. So go check it out. Blood and Leather on any podcast outlet that you might choose to use, Apple, Spotify, even on YouTube. So check it out. All right, this is Idaho. Some of the fields in Idaho. I have no idea what type of crop this is. I haven't really. Maybe soybeans. Take a look at the size of some of these fields. And I saw some fields behind me that were mounded up as if they were going to be putting some potatoes or something in there, perhaps. So a lot of different things, maybe. Isn't that incredible? Look at the size of those fields. They go on for a while now. Over here, we're getting ready to come. Oh, look at across that way. Look at that. You can see the rain over here. Big fields. Look at that. Just huge. That rain's pretty cool looking. I like that. That's an interesting looking. All right, enough of that. And of course, in Idaho, there are tons of potatoes, but you have to rotate crops. So I know people do wheat, maybe soybeans, different types of crops. I took US 20 from Ashton up to West Yellowstone. Didn't stay in West Yellowstone at this point. I traveled on up on US 191 to Bozeman and stayed at a nice Airbnb there with a family. But the next day, I planned on doing some traveling through Montana, and I had a wonderful trip through there. But on this trip, I made it into Bozeman on day 7. I guess that would be the third leg of my trip. Enjoyed every bit of that, but it was pretty late when I got in there. I think it was almost dark, and I think I started the trip that morning at about 5:15, something like that. As soon as it was daylight, I'd hit the road. Well, I'm always looking for old cars, and in Bozeman, I found this old Model A with a tractor axle, or at least tractor tires on the back. And these are old tractor fenders on the back as well. I thought that was pretty cool with a flathead V8 in the Model A. So I took my drive here on, I guess this would have been the 18th of June, 2019. And I was driving over to Virginia City and ended up driving all the way up to Missoula, Montana and back. So I'm just going to go ahead and show the pictures, and if something of interest pops up, I will let you know. Otherwise, I'm going to put some music on here and just let you enjoy the slideshow. So the next day, day 8, I suppose it would be, I left Bozeman and I headed back west on State Highway 84. I followed that all the way over to Norris, where I headed south on US 287 to Ennis, Montana. Beautiful little town there in Ennis. And then I took State Highway 287 over to Virginia City, the gold mining area, the Alder Gulch, and all the other areas through there. Then over into the Ruby Valley, up through that to Twin Bridges. And from there, I took Montana 41 south toward Dillon. So you can see here that Ruby Valley is really pretty. Enjoyed that quite a bit. And moving down through Dillon, it was also really pretty. There, somewhere down in that area, and I think around in that area is Beaverhead Rock. So I saw that. And if you're a fan of Lewis and Clark, you know that Beaverhead Rock was a formation that they saw. Sacagawea saw that to let her know that they were in the area where the Shoshone tribe, her tribe, would be. So from there I took State Highway 278 on up through the area there by Jackson on up into Wisdom. And when I hit Wisdom, I took State Highway 43 to US 93 north, which took me on up all the way up to Missoula. Now, after you leave Wisdom, there's a place there called, let's see, the Big Hole National Battlefield, which was the Nez Perce and the Army had a fight, big battle there. So I think that was part of the Nez Perce's flight trying to get to Canada during that period of time. Lolo was where the area where Lewis and Clark passed over the mountains, headed back over into Idaho. From there, I took from Missoula. I took I-90 across, and I took that over to U.S. Highway 12 east, and that little highway there, U.S. Highway 12, is. Oh yeah, I almost forgot this. Montana State Prison is located there in Deer Lodge. It's a great destination. I hate to say that. It's a great place to go visit. They have a nice car museum there, so you can go in there and take a nice visit at the Montana State Penitentiary. But the road there between I-90 and Helena is US 12, and there, that little area, that little valley is called the Valley of 1,000 Haystacks. They still stack hay the old-fashioned way. They just stack it up in big piles. So that was pretty interesting. Then I dropped down over into, obviously, Helena and back down to the Three Forks area. Jumped back on I-90 and took myself right back over to Bozeman that day. And stayed at the same Airbnb I'd stayed the night before. So day 8, I think it is. That's what I did. And that was a great drive, by the way, so I would highly recommend it to anybody. You can see here that on the 18th of June 2019, I drove almost 560 miles, took 10 and a half hours of driving during that trip. Great day of driving. I can't recommend it highly enough. Well, that brings me to the end of my couple of days in Bozeman, my travels around Montana. I highly recommend the trip, the expedition, if you will, from Bozeman over to Virginia City, back around up through Missoula and back. Fantastic drive. It's a long drive, a long day, and there are many other things you could see, but it's a great one, and I recommend it. This view is looking east from Ennis, Montana, right up through this little valley, this little canyon up through there. I'd recommend it highly. Beautiful place. Get out and enjoy the good old US of A. And until I see you again, endeavor to persevere.